Chana dal Kachoris, a presentation created by Alishba Imran. What are Chana dal Kachoris? According to NDTV Food, Kachoris are deep-fried breads made with ground dal sautéed along with spices and filled with a cover of maida, which is flour, and baking powder. This is the most popular roadside snack that you'll find across North India, specifically parts of Rajasthan. Kachoris have a number of varieties, the most popular ones being khasta kachoris and dal kachoris. They are a common type of street food in South Asia and can be eaten for breakfast, lunch, or even dinner. Different types of kachoris include chana dal, pyaz, matar, paneer, and more. They are ideal handheld foods and can easily be eaten on the go and are paired well with some sort of sauces. I prefer chutneys, which are primarily sweet, but they can also be paired with spicy chutneys as well, or even a liquefied yogurt dish called raita. Why did they become so popular? Chana dal kachoris were originally created by the Marwari people, which are an Indian ethnic group from the city of Rajasthan. According to the Indian hotspot, the existence of kachoris can be dated back to 1613 in Rajasthan, even before samosas, another popular street food delicacy. This connects to my cultural background because at this time both Pakistan and India were still a united country, and it's important to acknowledge because my family comes from both sides. My dad's primarily from India and my mom's from Pakistan. Why is the food significant to you? Chana dal kachoris are indeed an important part of my cultural and ethnic origins. However, they also hold great meaning towards my family as well as myself in terms of the traditionality of the food and the occasions we tend to eat them at. I feel as though kachoris are also comfort food of mine because whenever I see or eat them, I always think of my mom and her home cooking. In my family, kachoris are a quite customary part of our daily lives, whether it is eating them for breakfast every so often or serving them to guests. I have so many memories connected to the day of Eid with my family, since it includes taking showers, morning prayers, dressing up, and then coming back home to eat these kachoris for breakfast. In all honesty, this meal has become such an essential part of my life that there is no comparison or substitute for it. The ingredients are culturally significant because of the connections back home. This snack per se is filled with South Asian spices, whether it's in terms of chaat masala, garam masala, red chili powder, or even some greens such as dhania, otherwise known as coriander. According to Flavors of the World, though a very young country, the food of Pakistan has a long and rich history. Formerly part of India, Pakistani food similarly relies heavily on rich combinations of spices. Spices are a huge part of who I am, and without them, without this kick in flavor, foods just seem bland to me. Another important ingredient is besan, which is made of grinded chana dal, hence the name of the dish. I believe that it is a unique usage of an ingredient in common South Asian countries. Other than the spices and grinded chana dal, in the filling, the dough is made like any other, with flour, water, and some salt, as well as ghee, which is clarified butter. Dough itself is a significant element due to its versatility in my household and the countless foods that one can make with it. The cooking methods most close to home include kneading the dough and dividing it into distinct portions and filling them up with chana dal because of how I grew up watching my mom and grandmother and even my aunt doing such things. What are some meal planning considerations you had? I feel as though I lucked out for the meal planning considerations because it was clear at the very beginning that there were a lot of food restrictions when it came to meat, dairy, nut, and fish products as well. My goal was to overcome these obstacles and find a recipe ideal for everyone. In my mind, I almost immediately eliminated options such as cultural desserts because of the common usage of dairy products such as milk. And for myself, in terms of meat, it would have been halal certified anyways because of the religion that I follow. Chana dal kachoris are the perfect fit for everyone because it is culturally significant for me, but it also accommodates everyone's dietary needs. The only ingredients that are almost crossing the line include the ghee or clarified butter that I'm using or the raita, which is optional. But other than that, I don't need any meat products or alternatives because there's no need for nuts and there's obviously no alcohol or anything surrounding that. My meal planning considerations included budget. As for that, the ingredients I needed to make the kachori itself were all available at the comfort of my home because of how culturally common they are in my household, and so there was no additional money spent in that area. As for the serving and preparation of the food, I simply needed to purchase a full set of disposable plates and some napkins because in order to eat chana dal kachoris, one doesn't need traditional utensils but simply needs their hands. I also planned on bringing the food in a reusable container or tray for easy transportation. Additionally, I planned on bringing some chutney or raita to accompany the main dish, which would be pre-made, of course. I also needed to consider the preparation and when I was going to make the kachoris. Initially, I had planned to present on April 26th, which would have been a day 2, meaning that we would have food and nutrition period 1, but it would also have been a Wednesday, so the middle of the week, and since kachoris are a fried food, even if I made and filled the dough over the weekend, I would have to freeze it for a longer period of time, so the dish wouldn't be as fresh as I would have liked it. This thought process caused me to change my official presentation date to Monday, which would also have been a day 2, allowing me to get the dough filled and ready the night before and fried in the morning. How was the food made? The equipment needed to make chana dal kachoris were measuring cups, measuring spoons, mixing bowls, a food processor, rolling pin, strainer, oil, ghee, which is clarified butter, chaat masala, chana dal, garam masala, which is allspice, fennel powder, which is soft, cumin powder, which is zira, coriander powder, which is dhania, salt, and some flour, which is maida. To begin, I let the chana dal bloom in water for around 2 to 3 hours and made sure to drain the water well afterwards. And after I had grinded the dried dal in a food processor so that the dal was coarse, or in other words, had an irregular distribution of pieces. In order to start the preparation of the dough, I measured the all-purpose flour or maida in a bowl, then added salt and melted ghee or clarified butter. The next part was to rub it in until the dough resembled a bread-like consistency. After such, the task at hand was to knead the dough so that it was soft and to leave it on the side for 10 to 15 minutes. Meanwhile, I prepared the stuffing by starting off and heating 2 tablespoons oil in a pan. Then I added the dry masalas on low heat, which were cumin powder, which is zira, coriander powder, which is dhania, fennel powder, which is soft, salt, red chili powder, garam masala powder, chaat masala, and mixed it well to prevent it from sticking to the pan. At this point, I had brought back the grinded chana dal to the mixture and mixed it well accordingly, cooking until the moisture had dried up and then transferring the filling to another bowl to allow it to cool. I brought back the dough in order to knead it again and then divided it into 8 equal portions. Next, I shaped the dough into balls and rolled them out about 2 to 3 inches in diameter. While applying water to the edges, I added in about 2 tablespoons of stuffing in the middle, pinching in the edges of the kachori while softly flattening it out with my hands and then pressing it down and gently rolling it out again, being cautious that the filling should not escape. The second last step was to heat the oil for deep frying on low to medium heat, then adding in the kachoris one by one and keeping them there until golden brown in color. Finally, it was time to plate and serve the dish. Was your food easy or hard to make? For the most part, I would say the food that I chose, being chana dal kachoris, were pretty easy to make. This is because I grew up in an environment where making naans, puris, parathas, and kachoris by hand were quite common in our household and still are. Due to this, I was able to observe some of the do's and don'ts beforehand and even develop some background knowledge. Though I did try to find recipes with similar ingredients and flavor palettes to that of my culture, and the recipe that I ended up choosing was exactly that. However, it should be acknowledged that I had to eliminate some of the ingredients because we just don't use them in my culture, or in my family or household specifically. It was a straightforward and simple recipe even for beginners like me. Because of the instructions and detail included, it was not overwhelming nor was it vague. I think the most complex part of the recipe was the dough itself, seeing that if one messes up the consistency of that, then it will greatly impact the turnout of the kachoris. The dough itself requires kneading, and that is something that I don't have as much practice as I would have liked to. Needless to say, my advice is that if one follows the recipe word for word, for the dough at least, then they will be completely fine. They should not worry. I would also add on to say that it is not a great idea to tamper with the addition of the ghee or clarified butter because that would also mess with the consistency of the dough of the kachoris. And if the kachoris have too much butter, then they are more likely to explode and stay flat when they are being deep fried. And if there's too little ghee, then the dough would not be able to stick together in the first place. Some other tips I would give to those who are making chana dal kachoris for the first time, specifically in terms of the filling, would include that there is no need to be precise in terms of the spices one is adding because truth to be told, after making the kachoris by the book, I realized that the level of spice wasn't exactly something that I would have liked to have in my household in the first place. In fact, it was a bit toned down and bland for my liking, as it didn't have the kicking flavor for kachoris that I usually look for. In this case, I would advise the person who is creating the kachoris to not hold back on tasting their food, because tasting, especially in reference to spices, is key because everyone is accustomed to different spice levels and spices. So naturally, they have different flavor palettes as well. Now that's it for my presentation, but I hope you learned something and even enjoy the chana dal kachoris I made for you all.